Welcome to another episode of TPL Pod. So I want you to picture this.
Okay.
It is December 8, 1959. You're standing in the beautiful hills of the French Riviera, but you are not looking at the Mediterranean Sea.
Right.
You are looking up at this towering, massive concrete wall. And behind that wall, there is 50 million cubic meters of water just pressing against the structure.
Which is an unimaginable amount of weight.
Yeah, it's heavy and relentless. And the water is just 28 centimeters from spilling over the absolute top edge.
Wow. That's what, barely the length of a standard school ruler?
Exactly. And down below, you have a dam guardian who is looking at fresh cracks in the concrete. He's desperately begging the authorities to let him release the pressure. And they basically just tell him, well, to wait.
And that waiting sets the stage for a catastrophe that, honestly, it almost defies human comprehension.
Yeah.
Because a few hours later, that dam doesn't just crack, it completely vanishes. It unleashes a 40-meter-high wall of water. Right, a 130-foot tsunami crashing through a dry, populated valley. It ends up killing 423 people, just erasing entire villages from the map.
It's just devastating.
It really is. It left a psychological scar on the nation that was so profound it actually permanently altered French marriage laws.
So today our deep dive is about unraveling the Malpasset Dam disaster. We're looking at historical records, geological surveys, and engineering postmortems to figure out what actually went wrong that night.
Because this isn't just a story about, like, heavy rainfall or a bad blueprint.
No, not at all. It's a story about a hidden geological trap, fatal bureaucratic delay, and how a literal marvel of modern construction turned into a 70-kilometer-per-hour weapon. You might think a concrete dam is unmovable, but today we're going to show you how fragile human infrastructure really is.
Yeah, to really grasp the sheer magnitude of this failure, we have to kind of rewind to the triumph of its creation. We need to set the scene in post-war France, specifically the early 1950s.
Right, they were rebuilding everything.
Exactly. The country is in this frantic race to modernize after World War II, and the Var department, that really beautiful stretch of the French Riviera, is just booming.
Oh, yeah.
You've got local agriculture suddenly needing massive irrigation, expanding towns need reliable drinking water, and there's this rapidly growing tourism sector demanding, modern amenities.
So the regional planners looked to the Rairan River. It's this seasonal river just north of the town of Fréjus. And they decide to build a grand solution.
And the solution they chose was honestly an architectural masterpiece. It was designed by a famous French engineer named André Coin. He designed what's known as a doubly curved, equal-angle arch-type dam.
But let's pause there for a second, because when I first read doubly curved, it took me a minute to visualize what that actually means in 3 dimensions.
Yeah, it's a bit hard to picture at first. Think of it in contrast to something familiar, like the Hoover Dam.
Okay.
The Hoover Dam is essentially this massive, gravity-driven wedge of concrete that just blocks a canyon.
Right. It just relies on sheer weight.
Exactly. But the Malpasset Dam was completely different. Doubly curved means the concrete wall doesn't just curve horizontally from one canyon wall to the other. It also curves vertically, like bowing outward from top to bottom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you took a giant shallow bowl and stood it on its edge, with the inside of the bowl facing the reservoir of water, that's the shape you're looking at.
I've always thought of arch dams as being like a classic Roman bridge, but just turned on its side.
That's a great analogy.
Because a Roman arch bridge uses the weight of the carts and the people crossing it to compress the stones tightly together, right?
It uses the load to build strength.
Exactly. So with an arch dam, it uses the immense pressure of the water itself to push the concrete structure incredibly tightly into the canyon walls on either side. It's just a brilliant piece of physics.
It really is.
But because of that doubly curved design, the dimensions they were able to achieve were almost hard to believe. I mean, the Malpasset Dam was 222 meters wide across the river valley.
Which is huge.
And 66 meters high. Yet, because the arch design is so incredibly efficient at distributing force, it was astonishingly thin.
Like dangerously thin to the untrained eye.
Yeah, it was just 6.78 meters thick at its base. And at the very top rim, it was a mere 1.5 meters thick.
I mean, that is barely wider than the hallway in a standard office building.
Yeah.
And it's holding back a towering inland sea.
Okay, let's unpack this. You have an eggshell of concrete holding back a massive lake.
Basically, yeah.
Instinctively, it sounds like madness. But mathematically, as long as the canyon walls hold firm, the structure is theoretically invincible.
Well, the math on paper was elegant, sure, But the reality of the construction phase, which ran from roughly 1952 to 1954, was incredibly messy.
Yeah.
Some sources actually trace the initial planning origins all the way back to 1941 during the war.
Wow, that long.
Yeah, which tells you how long this project was kicked around before breaking ground. It eventually cost 580 million francs in 1955 prices, but it was constantly plagued by severe complications.
Like what?
Well, there were bitter labor strikes that completely halted work for long stretches. But the most critical issue was a chronic, agonizing lack of proper funding.
Right, from the regional and national governments.
Exactly, right from the very beginning.
And we're going to pull on that thread of underfunding a little later because it becomes the fatal flaw in this entire story.
It really does.
But for a few years, the dam actually does its job perfectly. It fills up, it provides water, and everything seems fine. But then we fast forward 5 years to November 1959.
Right.
The region is suddenly hit by torrential, record-breaking rain.
And the meteorological data from that month is just staggering. Over the course of 2 weeks in late November, 50 centimeters of rain absolutely saturates the region.
That's a massive amount of water.
It is. To put that in perspective, that is a huge portion of their annual rainfall compressed into just a fortnight. The parched earth simply can't absorb it. So it all runs off directly into the Rairan River.
And the storm only accelerates.
Right. Yeah. In the final 24 hours leading up to the disaster, another 13 centimeters of rain falls.
Oh my God.
So the reservoir behind that thin concrete eggshell is filling at a terrifying, unprecedented rate.
And the structure immediately starts showing extreme signs of distress.
Yeah.
In late November, dam inspectors notice a trickle of completely clear water seeping out high up on the right side of the dam.
Which is never a good sign.
No. And then days later, actual cracks start appearing in the concrete apron at the toe, the very base of the dam where it meets the ground.
Right. And while the politicians and bureaucrats in Paris are looking at rainfall spreadsheets, a man named André Ferrot is actually standing on the groaning concrete.
He was the dam's designated guardian, right?
Yes. And by noon on December 2, the situation turns critical. The reservoir has reached its absolute maximum safety level. Like you said earlier, the water is just 28 centimeters from spilling over the rim.
Right.
Ferrot hears the groans of the concrete. He sees the leaking water. He urgently radios the authorities, begging for permission to open the discharge valves and release the excess water to save the structure.
Wait, why on earth would they say no to releasing water when the dam is literally cracking?
Well,
Like, if I'm managing this valley and the guardian calls to say it's overflowing, I'm opening those valves instantly. Were the release valves jammed or something?
No, the valves worked perfectly. The refusal came down to this terrifying human calculus driven entirely by economic anxiety.
What do you mean?
At the exact same time the dam was reaching its breaking point, there was another massive infrastructure project underway just 1,400 meters downstream. They were building the new A8 autoroute, this major modern highway meant to connect the Riviera.
Oh, I see. So if you release the water, it has to go somewhere.
Exactly.
And somewhere is directly into the riverbed where the new highway is being built.
Precisely. The river valley acts like a natural funnel. If Ferrot opened those massive release valves, the spillway would act like a fire hose aimed straight at the vulnerable A8 construction site.
Wow.
Yeah. The authorities were terrified that a massive, sudden surge of water would flood the highway project. They thought it would ruin millions of francs worth of heavy construction equipment and delay this vital economic artery.
That is insane. They prioritized protecting tractors and half-built bridge pylons over relieving a dam that was begging to be decompressed.
They did. They gambled that the concrete could hold out just a little longer. They ordered Ferrot to sit on his hands and watch the water rise.
That is so frustrating.
They forced him to wait until 18:00 hours, 6:00 p.m. that evening. After 6 agonizing hours of the reservoir pushing against its absolute structural limits, the authorities finally caved and gave the order.
But the math at that point is completely unforgiving. Ferrot opens the release valves, and water starts discharging at a rate of 40 cubic meters per second, which sounds like a roaring torrent. But you have to remember the scale we're dealing with here.
Right, a reservoir of 50 million cubic feet.
Exactly. Even running the valves at maximum capacity, it would take 3 full hours just to lower the water level by a few meager centimeters. The release is practically a drop in the bucket.
The forces at play had already passed the point of no return. At exactly 9:13 p.m., the catastrophic failure occurs.
And it wasn't a slow failure.
No. The Malpasset Dam doesn't just crack or crumble. It is entirely obliterated in a fraction of a second. Only a few scattered concrete blocks remain clinging to the right bank of the river.
The physics of the breach are almost apocalyptic. I mean, when that eggshell of concrete shatters, all 50 million cubic meters of water are instantly liberated.
Yeah.
It creates a dam break wave, this solid wall of water 40 meters high.
Which is just terrifying to imagine.
It's a 130-foot-tall mountain of water, mud, and debris, plunging down the river valley at 70 kilometers per hour.
And that destructive force wipes the landscape clean. The wave immediately annihilates two small sleeping villages downstream, Malpasset and Boson.
God.
And in a cruel twist of irony, it completely obliterates the very A8 highway construction site the authorities had sacrificed the dam to protect.
Of course it did.
The heavy equipment they were so worried about is just tossed around like bath toys. The water is moving with such unbelievable kinetic energy that it's carrying chunks of the broken concrete dam with it.
Massive chunks, right?
We are talking about solid blocks of concrete weighing up to 600 tons being swept along in the current like pebbles.
And 20 minutes later, the wave reaches the coastal city of Fréjus.
Right.
Even after spreading out across the widening valley and traveling all that distance, the wall of water is still 3 meters high.
So nearly 10 feet of churning water.
Exactly. 10 feet of water carrying trees, concrete, and cars, crashing into the western half of the city. It destroys roads, rips up railroad tracks, and swallows entire neighborhoods before finally emptying out into the Mediterranean Sea.
And the human cost was just absolute devastation. The official death toll was 423 people.
So tragic.
It is. And when you look at the demographics of the victims, it becomes almost unbearable. Of those 423 dead, 135 were children under the age of 15.
Oh, wow.
There were 15 minors between the ages of 15 and 21, 134 men, 112 women, and 27 individuals whose remains were actually never identified. In the aftermath, 79 children were left orphaned in a single night.
Entire bloodlines just wiped out in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
The sheer scale of the property destruction is staggering, too. I mean, 155 buildings completely destroyed, nearly 800 more heavily damaged, and 350 hectares of agricultural land completely ruined.
The financial hit was massive.
In 2010 terms, experts estimated the property damage alone at 425 million euros, and the national response was immediate. The French government actually printed special 1959 postage stamps that carried a specific flood surcharge.
Oh, really?
Yeah, meaning every time an everyday citizen mailed a letter, they were directly funding the Malpasset recovery effort.
That's fascinating. I mean, the country really mobilized to rebuild the buildings, but you can't just rebuild a shattered community, you know?
No.
The grief was so overwhelming that it sparked a massive, unprecedented legal shift in France.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Because so many people were killed instantly, there were numerous engaged couples where one partner survived and the other perished.
Right.
You had young men and women whose entire futures were stolen by a bureaucratic delay. The public outcry was so strong and the emotional trauma so deep that the grieving survivors demanded a way to honor those lost futures.
Yeah.
The French government actually responded by officially ushering in the practice of posthumous marriage for civilians. Grieving fiancés were legally granted the right to marry their lost partners after death.
Which is just, wow.
It wasn't just a legal loophole. It was a nation's desperate attempt to restore dignity to people whose lives were cut short.
It's a legal echo of the tragedy that still exists in French law today, actually, which inevitably leads us to the darkest, most pressing question in the aftermath.
Right. Why did it fail?
Exactly. Why did this marvel of engineering shatter in the first place? Up until the Malpasset incident, doubly curved arch dams were considered practically invincible.
Because they're supposed to get stronger under pressure.
Exactly. History had only recorded 3 other instances of arch-type dams ever breaching. There was the Moy Dam in Idaho in 1925, the Lake Lanier Dam in South Carolina in 1926, and the Purissima Dam in California in 1930.
So it's incredibly rare.
Very rare. They just don't fail.
Because, as we established earlier, the design pushes the structure stronger together, the more pressure the water applies. Yeah. The concrete should have held.
Well, the deep dive into the engineering forensics revealed a shocking truth. The failure wasn't actually in the concrete at all.
Really?
Yeah. The failure was in the earth itself. The official geological and hydrological studies for the dam were conducted way back in 1946. They drilled a few test holes, looked at the rock, and declared the location perfectly suitable.
Okay.
But remember that chronic lack of funding we talked about during the construction phase?
Oh, man. The financial strain that constantly delayed the project. You're telling me they cheaped out on the geological survey, too?
They absolutely did. Because of a severe lack of proper funding, the geological study of the valley was dangerously superficial. They didn't drill deep enough.
Unbelievable.
The rock underlying the left side of the dam is a metamorphic rock called gneiss. Now, gneiss is known for being highly impermeable.
Meaning water can't get through it.
Right. It doesn't allow significant groundwater flow within the rock unit. Water simply cannot soak into it.
It's like putting a dam in a bathtub with no drain. I mean, you have this massive 50 million cubic meter body of water sitting on top of a surface that refuses to let any moisture absorb downward into the earth.
That bathtub analogy perfectly captures the trap they built. Under the immense weight of the floodwaters, the water aggressively found every tiny microscopic fissure it could in the concrete and the top layer of dirt. The water collected under the concrete wall of the dam. But because that gneiss rock deeper down was completely impermeable, the water was trapped. It couldn't drain away. So the hydrostatic pressure had only one path of least resistance.
Which was up.
It pushed back up.
Oh, wow. So the water wasn't just pushing horizontally against the face of the dam trying to tip it over.
Right.
The trapped water underneath was actively creating an upward diagonal force trying to lift the entire concrete structure right off its foundation.
That is the exact mechanism. It was a massive upward force vector the engineers had not found or accounted for in their math, all because the geological survey hadn't mapped the impermeability of the deep rock.
That's a huge oversight.
It gets worse. To make a fatal situation even more dire, that incomplete 1946 survey entirely missed a tectonic fault line hidden deep in that impermeable rock base.
You've got to be kidding me.
Nope. The dam was essentially anchored to a loaded spring. Once the extreme November rains filled the reservoir to maximum capacity, the upward diagonal pressure of the trapped water hit that hidden fault line.
And the rock gave way.
The rock itself sheared away. The dam didn't break. The mountain holding the dam broke.
That is terrifying.
Yep.
But, as we comb through the sources, there's another layer to this mystery.
Right.
Was it purely the rain, the trapped water, and the hidden fault line?
Yeah.
Because there are some extremely unsettling details from the weeks leading up to the disaster that suggest something else might have triggered the collapse.
Yeah, the official record points heavily to the geological trap, but there is a prominent secondary theory regarding human activity that we really have to look at.
Okay.
Remember the A8 highway construction 1,400 meters downstream.
The very site the authorities were sacrificing the dam to protect?
Exactly. To build that highway through the rocky terrain, the construction crews were using heavy dynamite explosions.
Wait, you have massive concussive blasts happening in the exact same river valley, echoing through the exact same continuous bedrock that the dam is anchored to.
Yes. Some civil engineers and historical sources suggest that those repeated dynamite explosions might have caused micro-shifting in the already stressed rock base of the dam.
It makes sense.
And there is circumstantial evidence to back this up. Weeks before the breach, locals and workers reported hearing distinct, sharp cracking noises coming from the dam area.
But nobody stopped to investigate a giant concrete wall making cracking sounds.
They didn't. It's unclear exactly when those noises started, but coupled with the clear water leaks that appeared on the right side of the dam in late November, it paints a harrowing picture of a structure that was crying out for help long before the final storm hit.
When you lay it all out, it is the ultimate cascade of human error and hubris.
Truly.
We have an incomplete, underfunded geological survey from 1946. We have an unyielding bedrock of gneiss that trapped the water, a hidden fault line acting as a trapdoor, potentially destabilizing dynamite blasts from a neighboring project.
Yeah.
2 weeks of record-breaking rain. And the final, fatal nail in the coffin. A bureaucratic delay of 6 hours, keeping the valves closed, just to protect some highway equipment.
The Malpasset Dam disaster is a profound lesson on the illusion of control. I mean, we build these marvels of mathematical engineering. A 66-meter-high arch, so thin and elegant it looks like a blade of concrete slicing the valley.
Yeah.
And we convince ourselves we have tamed the river, we assume nature will obey our blueprints, but that brilliance can be completely undone by a single undocumented fault in the earth and by a fatal hesitation from someone sitting at a desk miles away.
Exactly.
The math of the concrete was perfect, but the understanding of the ground it sat on was practically non-existent.
And that's the takeaway that really sticks with you. When we build to harness nature, we cannot just look up at the towering achievements of engineering. We have to look deeply beneath our feet.
We really do.
And perhaps most importantly, we cannot let short-term economic fears override clear, screaming warning signs from the environment. I mean, they had a guardian telling them the dam was literally at its limit, and they chose the economy over the physics.
It makes you look at every piece of massive infrastructure around you with a new sense of scale. A wall of concrete is only as strong as the unseen rock beneath it.
It really does. And it leaves you with a deeply unsettling thought about the world we live in today.
How so?
Well, thousands of dams all over the world were built in the mid-20th century, just like Malpasset. They were built using mid-20th century climate data and mid-20th century geological surveys.
That's a good point.
As we move into an era of modern weather extremes with storms that regularly break historical records, you have to wonder how many other Malpassets are out there? How many massive concrete walls are sitting on hidden geological traps just waiting for a storm their designers never even imagined?
It's definitely something to think about.
Thanks for listening to PaleoPod. Keep tuning in for more stories worth knowing.